So we have the October 25th meeting of the Conservation Commission. Will stand and salute the flag, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Potential liability here.
So look at that. Get OSHA in here. Shut us down. I think I tweaked my back.
You stop? All right, so the first hearing tonight is a discussion, Westport Land Conservation Trust with Ross Moran. How are you tonight?
Hey.
Hello there, gentlemen. Ross Moran, Executive Director of the Westport Land Conservation Trust, coming to you this evening for seeking your acceptance for a conservation restriction on Berry Hill Farm on Pine Hill Road. The Land Trust is currently in the process of acquiring the farm, putting a conservation restriction on it in partnership with the town. That restriction is going to be purchased via CPC funds that were approved at town meeting. The restriction will be similar to the ones we put on some recent farms that we collaborated with the town on, and it will be eventually resold to a future farmer. And so the idea is to continue the tradition that Bob and his father have created at Berry Hill Farm long into the future. They farmed that property for well over 50 years. I'm happy to answer any questions about the property or the restriction, but this evening that's what we're seeking from the commission.
Is that the Blueberry Farm?
That's the Berry Hill
Yeah.
Farm. Yep, Blueberry Farm.
Well, just for the record, Mr. Chairman, there is a single-family lot that will be remaining
Correct.
out
So,
of the acreage, and the remaining acreage will go to the CR.
correct. Well, so there is a CR that will have what we described. The state has changed this label several times over the years in conservation restrictions. It's called a special use area, which is basically a buildable area that has some restrictions on it. And so the size of the house is restricted, and what you can build in that footprint is restricted from a square footage perspective. So,
All right. Anybody have any questions?
Where in the, I'm a neighbor, I'm
yeah.
4 houses down, more or less.
Yep.
Where is the buildable lot on the,
It's
on that
in the
property?
forested side on the southern portion of the property. So not in
So
the ag area.
my side and back,
Yeah.
kind of almost
Yeah.
behind Bob's house,
Yeah.
back that way. Yeah.
Just south of Bob's house.
Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? If not, a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve, right?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Jason and Kevin, all those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous, so.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You have a great night.
All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks for your good work.
You take that one now.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a great property.
Thank you for your good work.
Say it nice and loud.
All right, no septic repairs. First one, we have Majo Cork, notice of intent, 2 Atlantic Ave, demolish existing home and replace with new home in flood zone and reconnect septic system.
They were in the hall, Mr. Chairman, but I think they were here. Are we not here yet? Can we just pass you over, you don't mind that?
Amanda Rodriguez, notice of intent, 156 Cherryway Lane, construct wooden stairway and platform over dunes. Sean, you took this, huh? I didn't know you could build into the dunes like that. Doesn't seem like you should be able to do that. The magnet's strong enough, John? All right.
That's only, you gotta have nothing for you guys.
Just submit it to the town for reimbursement. Put it in next year's budget.
I haven't been here in a while, so I decided I was gonna bring presents. Okay, for the record, Sean Leach, Northeast Engineers and Consultants, representing Amanda Rodriguez, 156.
Sean, you have the green cards.
Oh, yeah, I do, I'm sorry. Yeah, the green cards. Cherry Webb Lane. This house is about 2 laneways down from the Town Beach parking lot. It shares a driveway, a common driveway with the house next door. Mr. Rodriguez bought this house and is in the process of trying to get access to the beach. What we're proposing here is one thing. So here's the lot, it's 1,300 feet deep, house is about 300 feet from Cherry Webb Lane, ocean over here. There's a giant bowl on her property that's famous for snowboarding and other things, including parties. There's always a giant bonfire down on the bottom. Mr. Rodriguez trying to clean up. What she'd like to do, there's an existing path coming from the house site that goes up the dune. The dune is very steep here. What she would like to do is construct a walkway, a wooden walkway that goes up along the existing path as close as possible. Supports for the pathway would be helical piles that are hand-driven into the slope, so there'll be no machinery on the slope itself. It's proposed to be 2 to 5 feet, depending on where you are on the slope above the existing dune. The backside of this dune is all vegetated. It's scrub oak and pine and briars and whatnot, bittersweet on this side. The front side of the dune, where she doesn't want to build anything, is more loose sand and windblown. The reason she wants to do this is she feels it's a better option than walking up and down the dune and just basically creating a land bridge from the sand sliding down the hill. At the top, she would like to put a platform, and she's willing to negotiate on that thing, just for a place to sit, but also as a place to rest, to get down, to get to basically what is her private beach, hopefully, and use the beach. We are proposing, again, a walkway 2 feet off. We're proposing mesh on all the decking, and there's one landing at the top where there's a turn, and we're proposing mesh on that. That's gonna be, it starts at 5 feet, and it ends up being about 3 feet off the dune. It's in the flood zone. There's a flood zone from the river that comes up just behind the house. There's a velocity zone that comes about 300 feet into the dunes, and then there's an A zone a little bit past that. This is well above that. This is at elevation 40, 45. Those flood zones are in the 20s. This is in the 12 coming from the riverside of the property. Job has been issued a file number 2657. We have notified National Heritage as it is in the habitat area. We have not received comments. I talked to them yesterday. They were expecting to get something out in the next day or two. I did not see anything this afternoon. It is located as obviously on the coastal dune. It is slightly in the flood zone where the landing in the beginning would be. We just feel it's a better option than going up and down the dunes and wearing a path basically in the dune. And we're willing to hear any comments tonight. We feel it's probably going to be continued since the National Heritage chimes in on the area.
What is it, like 700 feet to the beach from the top of the, on the end of the walkway?
It's probably about 800 feet from the top of the dune down to the beach itself. There is a path that picks up here that comes in from the neighboring property. The hope is to get down here onto the path and then onto the beach. There isn't already an opening in the dune right there.
All right, Chris?
I would just reflect that the plan doesn't show anything that Mr. Leach described, so if there is any potential use of the remaining area, that it needs to be regulated in a manner that tries to maintain a singular path access. I'll just state that quickly. Mr. Chairman, this is Amanda Rodriguez, 156 Cherry and Webb Lane. This is a new acquisition of the property this summer. This is a notice of intent application filed by Sean Leach from Northeast Engineers and Consultants. The date of the report is October 18th, 2022. There is a file number, SE 802657, but there actually are comments from the state on that issuance. Detailed description, again, this project requires natural heritage oversight, more so for the habitat, which Sean referenced in the end. Natural heritage doesn't encompass this whole piece. They only have an area of the southerly proximity for piping plovers, etc. So the owner has filed to propose an elevated stairwell and observation deck on a coastal dune located to the rear of the property. An existing rope system to climb the dune is located currently at the site. Actually, there is an old filing where the previous owner had a staircase that, again, we've learned since that time isn't the way you're supposed to do it, but it actually is buried inside and underneath this ladder when and it's very deteriorated. There's exposed nails and stuff from the timbers rotting out, so there is evidence of some access for this path. The new owner, I think, accentuated this rope system just to aid them since they purchased the property. That wasn't there when I did a site visit. The access, site visit earlier when they purchased. The access to the top of the dune must meet the CZM guidelines and the Wetlands Protection Act 310 CMR 10.28, which is the regulations for a coastal dune. The Mass DEP in the file number issuance states a detailed narrative should be provided on the temporary and permanent resource area impacts, which actually in the application it mentions an alteration of a coastal dune, which I don't think is what the applicant is meant to do here. There should be no permanent impacts to the coastal dune. Temporary impacts, I would more say, would be from the helical installation. The Wetland Protection Act specifies that no impacts to the coastal dune are to be allowed. The applicant needs to provide more details, method of installation, type of materials, in this case needs clarification. In the design of the boardwalk, it needs to maintain 2-foot setbacks above the dune and have the ability to be adjusted if the dune migrates. In this dune section, this is very unstable area, as Sean touched on. This is a blowout area of the dune that has been historic. This has been here for as far as I can go back in the aerial photos. So the velocity of wind in this area is very strong, and it creates actually this giant scarp, which is a wind-blown formation of a dune just to the left. And it raises up in some of the photos, you can see it. You can see the whisk of the wind at the top of it, where if anybody does something here, there is potentially gonna be causing some sort of stoppage of that wind, and we most likely will see this be buried or potentially covered. So that is where the variability of this helical system is important, where that piled system should have this elevated structure, in my opinion, higher than that 2 foot, just in case of those circumstances, or it should have the ability to be adjusted. This doesn't necessarily show that. It does show a system, so hopefully we can make that as a condition if we come to agreeance. Again, the wind whips through this area as it lacks vegetation. Any boardwalk in this area would impact the ability of the dune to move and would be covered over by sand. I suggest the applicant continue here and provide a detailed narrative on how the project meets the Wetlands Protection Act and describe method of construction. Any further activity beyond the first stairwell should be eliminated. In other words, we did see a similar project. We allowed the person access to the top of the dune. After that, if they want to create a pathway to the ocean, we encourage them to do it with either signage, some wooden fencing, some method to keep the same access to the beach. But that isn't necessarily shown here, so I think that would be more detailed if this woman or this family expects to utilize that portion of the beach. Because as the commission remembers in the other person's issues, we were concerned about that primary dune and that impacts that this trampling of it could have in that more volatile and fragile section of the dune. So basically, in my additional comments, I added there was no vegetation that should be altered during this, as we discussed on the previous applicants that we had many meetings over. Trimming of branches is feasible. So this boardwalk needs to make its way through that pathway that's there without its physical alteration of vegetation. And that means to utilize the existing path for access. If that path is not entirely on the property, then I think we need to know what needs to be done to utilize that path or create something to allow this to be placed. Recommendations: the Westport Conservation Commission should continue hearing for additional narrative and clarification and consider less activity on the dune. More specifically, the dune is not a recreational area. It shouldn't have an observation deck or methods to put that mechanism, in my opinion, is an even more of a sensitive area because of the lack of vegetation, as I previously mentioned, and the wind concerns. I'd like to see the center line of the proposed access staked in the field, so we physically can see where that may end up. And further access through the dune needs clarification. We need to know what the ultimate result of this access is. with that, Mr. Chairman, I recommend the continuance, is in order.
Yeah, from the last one, applicant, I don't think the observation that's probably gonna cut it, so.
No, and I have mentioned that to the applicant. I mean, I thought it was, you know, she was looking for some kind of landing up there, basically, you know, as a rest spot, because there's 67 steps to get up to the top of the dune, and that was one thing. One of the things, you know, the path is entirely on their property, and the reason we kind of cut like this is because that's been a historic way of going. So that we can do something there. I don't know, just end it or something, and I can show the existing path that comes into here. This is pretty much void of vegetation. It's a bowl, and there's more glass and burnt pallets than anything else in here. She's concerned about that. She's also going to put signage up about keeping off the dunes. She would also basically like to be able to get to the property without damaging things. So I don't disagree with anything that Mr. Capone said, obviously. And can she put a landing there or something, just so they can have a step down, or?
The other applicant, at the end of the day, they had across 2 dunes, they made like basically a bridge, for the most part.
Yeah.
Or a big walkway, and they just put a ramp going down.
Well, she almost thought about doing something from here to here, same type of thing, and we kind of talked her out of it because of the tree cover. Here, there's an existing path, and she was just trying to figure out how to get from the house over to here. There is an existing path that comes right up along this property line. I think this gentleman uses it also. I'm not sure if anybody else comes in this way, but I know what goes on here at night during the winter, and she's trying to prevent some of that, so. We can provide obviously more detail. We are proposing helical piles that can be adjusted and hand augered in basically, so there's no equipment. So that's not a problem. I don't know what we're looking for height of the dune. We can make it vary. It's not, this dune is pretty steep, so you can make it pretty high off the dune without a problem. It's just the stairway, that's all you want to improve.
Well, the same dune we approved was just inside, they just brought a ramp, went to a landing, went up to a landing, up, and so they stayed, in some cases, they were 12 feet off the dune, so that they never have to worry about it. What I'm trying to say to you, that steep grade you got there, I mean, that's like straight up, so
This is
if you
exaggerated.
stop further out.
This is exaggerated 2 to 1. I mean, this is really more like this, but the height.
You think so? Did you climb that rope?
Yeah, yeah, but no, this is exaggerated. Yeah.
Climb the rope, Sean, it isn't more like this.
I looked at it, she flies right up there, she doesn't have a problem, but she also realizes what's going on, and if they're going back and forth, and she has 2 children that'll be doing the
And
same
also,
thing.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, if there are other things she would like to do in there, that includes planting, cleaning, removal of glass, I mean, those things should be, not that that's detrimental to the environment, but she should, put it here, it may be a selling point in some ways to, improve the existing site conditions. Yes, that's been a historical area, but you're exaggerating quite somewhat. The kids today don't do what we did when we were younger. They're too busy
It's
playing
a very popular snowboarding spot.
I don't think the Durfee side, the Somerset side, and whoever else is out there is there anymore, because that's how it used to be, and I do admit, I may have lit something in that area, but that was not me that lit it, I was just enjoying the company.
Well, what happens, I see it when I'm at the beach in the winter, if there's even any kind of frost on the dunes, there's snowboarding, they have a little
Right.
get together.
No, I know, so I understand that, but she has to understand that the use of that place has really been unregulated, so if she wants to govern it, I do encourage her to consider the use of snow fencing, the use of
She has
wooden
no,
slat fencing, I know there's a person in the audience here that's made measures to try to control that dune, and this area is very volatile. I've seen his efforts in there, and they're blown away because of the sheer, velocity of the wind that kind of comes through that section, so. I just want her to be understanding.
No, she understands
I
that.
had a conversation already with her,
yeah.
I explained and now she kind of interpreted things a little differently. So access is what we'll provide. What she considers beyond that point has to be shown. If it's just foot traffic, that's fine, but you still should be having some sort of demarcation. And that is what the National Heritage had asked in the end of the other applicant as well. They had to demarcate signage, stay on the path, along those lines. So I think we should be requesting similar to what we previously have accepted.
I don't think any of that's a problem.
I understand, thank you.
What about the existing stairs that are there, were those ever permitted?
Yes, they were. Mr. Diamond did permit those in the original day. And that's why I mentioned that back, I guess, in consideration, this was when I was here in '96 or '98, he put those in, so, that little ladder mechanism is something I think Mrs. Rodriguez added this summer.
Yeah. I don't know when they got added, but yeah, I mean, that, and essentially the steps that are there are unusable and
No,
deteriorated.
the steps are there, are deteriorated completely, yes.
All right. So just one quick thing, it's not really within our scope, but just kind of a thought. If she does insist on having that observation deck, kids light the fire in the valley to get out of the wind. If someone had a little fire pit, they will end up with some type of fire pit on that thing. Embers will be blowing right into the heavily vegetated backside of that
Right.
dune.
Well, I look
You
at
know,
it.
you know, prevailing south wind all summer, and
Oh, especially.
the fire department can't get in there. So if those dunes go, there's no stopping it.
Right. I mean, I think the platform is detrimental to her health because I think it'll be a nice resting spot for the snowboarders before they go down the hill, to tell you the truth. That'll be a place where they gather and more than anything else.
Yeah, I don't think that's really an option.
The observation deck will be the source of their fire in the dune.
I would say next to the observation deck, get
Yeah.
that marked out for Chris, so you go look at it. Maybe spend an hour walking the living room and try to get it buttoned up for the next hearing.
Can you make it to the next hearing, or you want?
Yeah, I think I can. I'm discussing, I mean, I'll show the path. It's not really be marked, but I don't know if you want it to.
Or do you come up the path and it does a 90-degree turn? I know that's what
Yeah,
the path did.
Yeah.
We just are not gonna allow you to
But
alter
from here, it
vegetation.
kinda just wiggles, you just kinda walk through.
I'm telling you that she needs to show something, because,
Okay.
because I think Natural Heritage is gonna wanna see something.
Yeah, they
I'm
do,
just referencing what they did on the last
yeah,
guy.
we even, seen the last one, once they came off their boardwalk, they wanted to see the path they were gonna take.
Now, we had nesting plovers in a bowl over near Vegas, so this is very susceptible to the same, and if a plover nests there, she's not supposed to utilize.
She's aware of that. Cause I talked to her, because she was wondering why they were all, when she bought it, they were all fenced off.
And that means that she may not have use of her beach either, so this
Right.
still makes me consider, and as I expressed, and I will say to the board, the town's access is only 150 feet, just 200 feet that way. You get to the dune and you do a 90 and you head over the top of the dune and you go down the beach access. But I understand, everybody wants to have their own beach, which she did purchase, and no one's put fencing up yet, but I'm sure someday we're gonna be fighting fencing on the beach face.
I think what she'd like to do is put some signs up just to keep off, but she mentioned fencing now.
See, I said, no, I'm not, everyone has this mean low to mean high access issues. I don't
No,
wanna- I don't wanna
she's more
stand
concerned
here.
about people coming up over the dune,
They
not so
gotta
much the
pee.
beach. But-
All right,
Okay.
I'm good,
So
Mr. Chairman.
continue for 2 weeks?
If that's what you want, you get it done in 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And then they do it.
All right, we have a motion to continue for 2 weeks, what will that be?
11:08.
11/8.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? That is still on Jason. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
That's election night, is that?
Yeah, we know.
We vote early and vote often, Valerie.
Did it get, I hear this is,
Yeah, we'll figure that out. We might have to move it, but
For now, we're gonna run with it.
we're running.
All right, Lenny, you're up. Domaggio Court, notice of intent, 2 Atlantic Ave, demolish existing home, replace with new home in the flood zone and reconnect the septic system.
That is wonderful, then. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, perfect. You got the file there, put that one in there, and you'll have another one coming after he finishes, but the plans will act to stamp it, and then he has satisfied my request.
This is, Glenn Potter here, Westport Environmental for the Marvel Court, 2 Atlantic Avenue. located in the corner of Hollow Road here and Atlantic Avenue here. The existing home that on the property is gonna be demolished, and they're gonna put up a new, home. It's in the velocity zone, this is the velocity zone, into the velocity zone right here. So, hopefully the whole lot's in the velocity zone. So, the top of the foundation is gonna go up to elevation 2456. This is currently a basement, and there will be some facsimile thereof, mainly for access to the house itself, the new home. The outline of the house is here, these are all piers that are gonna be put in place, and, the new elevator to take people up to the second floor, so to speak, it's up there. So, the architect is here, Andy DiGiorno, I'm gonna turn it over to him, in case you have any questions, probably more so on the construction. The septic system exists, four-bedroom system was replaced 7 or 8 years ago, and it's past Title V, and this plan indicates a tie-in to the existing tank and septic system, so septic's not an issue. This is the, storm drains for the roof wall. And that's pretty much it on my behalf.
Does the tie-in consist of, does it require double wall pipe or something in that stretch of velocity section along the mile? Does not.
I think it's in the way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name's Andrew P. I'm with Compass Group Architecture. So there's a concept you need to understand about this site that's a little confusing if you look at the plan. Lenny talked about there's an existing basement. So this is right on the corner of Howland and Atlantic. And the site is approximately 4 feet higher than Atlantic, the grade. So, this house and the existing houses that are adjacent to it, traveling east down Atlantic, we have approximately 4 foot high stone retaining walls. Because you couldn't drive your car, you could not access the site just by driving off Atlantic. So that's what you're seeing here, this is the existing house. These are the stone retaining walls on either side. Here's another view of it. It currently has a cobblestone apron on Atlantic, and you drive in. Right now, they have a full basement with a drive in the garage. That's gonna be demolished. So what we're proposing is the cobblestone apron and the original walls will remain. I'm gonna flip to that sheet.
Do you want these back in?
I don't have to. This just doubles the scale at that ground level. So the house is in a V zone, as Len mentioned. There's gonna be 20 reinforced concrete piers to support the house. They're 18 by 18 with 7 by 7 and 8 by 8 footings. A couple of them are combined where you get into the corners. So in a V zone, we're in a V elevation 21. So we're gonna add 2 feet of freeboard. So the design elevation is 23. It's a V zone. The bottom of our lowest structural member will be at elevation 23. A little bit higher, about an inch above that. The top of the piers will be at elevation 23. So the house is supported on these 20 piers that you see on the structural grid. This is the existing wall coming into the site. What we're proposing is continuing these walls around to form an area where the existing basement will be demolished. You would drive in with your car here. This is where the existing concrete slab is. Anything below the 23-foot elevation, the design elevation, would be breakaway walls. We're limiting the breakaway wall area to 10% of the area above or less. So we're proposing about 200 square feet, including the stairs and the elevator within the breakaway wall areas. So the concept would be, as you come down the existing driveway, there'd be an option here to go up some granite steps. So if you were to visit the house, you would walk in here, go up the steps, come in the door here and then go up to the residence. If you came in by car, you could park your car here, get out, go into the breakaway wall area, and get on some stairs to go up to the first level from there. These would break away, these walls would form that area, the extension of the existing walls would form that area where you could drive in. Basically, it would take the place of some of the basement walls that are there now, where they drive in, which would be demolished. These walls would be, they would go from 4 feet high to 6 feet high in the back, because the grade rises about 2 feet as you go north.
So there's a mechanism for water to go in and come out.
Yes,
It will have a slight slope to it, in a sense, from back to front.
it has a natural slope going north, so.
So it'll drain from the northerly towards the road if there was a flooding event.
Correct.
Thank you.
And typically what would happen during the event, if it was a 100-year storm, that whole area, the water would be up that high and the waves would be riding on top of that.
Correct,
And then it would,
in theory.
right, so these are the elevations. This would be the south elevation, which fronts on Atlantic Avenue. These are the walls that would form the retaining area. That's between the dock wall and the light wall. That's the difference in the 2 feet between the front and the back. So you can see the option of where you walk up the steps, go to the front door, and then up into the house, or you could drive in here and enter the side. These walls here would be breakaway. This would all be open. The north elevation, which would be the side opposite this, would just, you can see the piers. There's 2 feet more grade here, so you can see the grade rising up on the piers. And the east elevation would have stairs up to the decks. There's decks on 3 sides of this house. That's how you could get on the deck from grade on the east side of the house. And anything below this area here is breakaway. These are all breakaway walls in that 200 square foot space that's being enclosed by the breakaway walls.
That's what it comes out to, is 200 square feet.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is.
So the walls will be beyond, but that enclosure you see in this north view is the breakaway section, correct? So the wall area is beyond.
Yes.
Yes, so you, basically that's encompassing the access and the elevator access.
Right. Anything below this beam here
Yes.
is
it's
breakaway,
Got it.
except for where you see the piers.
Thank
That's
you,
the piers that will break away from.
thank you.
And what are you doing about stormwater control? You know, I mean, is the roof, from roof and other,
Underground drain.
It's
okay,
an infiltration system right in the front yard.
okay.
What exactly does the term breakaway wall mean? What breaks?
So what happens is, when you're in a V zone, you build the house up on piers.
Yeah,
And if you want to infill, you have to design the walls so they break away.
okay, between the piers, that the water can break through the wall and go through.
Right, you design it so that the water will never put pressure on the structure.
Right,
The
right.
walls will just go.
Just goes,
And
breaks
that's
through.
done by lack and
Okay.
nailing.
It's done by the fastening schedule, so you build a wall in between and you figure out how many fasteners.
There's some existing houses right in that area with walls like that now.
Yeah, there are. Well, it is required, as Andy
Yeah.
mentioned, and he mentioned the percentage on which Ralph verified of what you're allowed under that structure.
Yeah.
It used to be unlimited, but now they've limited it to 10% of the floor above. You can't have any mechanicals down there.
Correct, right. So it's basically access in an event. It is also a deterrent, because the flooding will get to a point and it will recede back out. So
Yes.
I don't feel you're deflecting stormwater or flooding waters in a manner.
And then condensers are all gonna be up on the decks above the flood level.
Correct. Mr. Chairman, this is Damajo Keurig, 2 Atlantic Ave. This is a notice of intent application. Westport Environmental Design and Compass Group is here representing. The report is dated 10/18/2022. The file number is SC 802658. The site visit was actually on the 17th of October 2022. The owner has filed to demolish a portion of existing home to allow the reconstruction of a new dwelling on concrete piles. The activity is proposed within the flood zone VE elevation 21. The existing site is at approximately elevation 15 in the front portion of the site, or approximately elevation 17 towards the rear of the property. The design home will be constructed on 20 18-inch by 18-inch concrete piles attached to a footing. A portion of the foundation basement will remain, and the new structure will be built over. What I wanted Andy to be here was to clarify that. It's actually not a foundation basement. It's more of a retaining wall that keeps the same grade of that existing driveway, encompassing a little cubed area under the home, with the home raised up above. So I think the way you clarified it makes it a little more clearer. The plan has
It will
been
look
made.
identical to the walls that are there.
Right.
It'll just form that area where they can pull their car down instead of in a garage.
Correct.
Get
Correct.
space below.
Right. The first floor elevation is correct at elevation 2456, plus or minus. This is well above the existing flood elevation requirements. Breakaway walls will be designed around the elevator shaft proposed to the access home. This work would require a finding by the zoning board of appeals. As we discussed with Ralph today, the finding is for if this home is more detrimental to the neighborhood. It's not that this is not allowed as far as an elevated structure. It's that it's a small, non-conforming lot, and the change in activity on it triggers them to go to ZBA. The provided plans have been given a structural or engineered stamp, as Lenny brought in this evening, so I'm okay with that. So recommendations, Westport Conservation Commission should approve with conditions. Stamp plan be provided, you can nick that. And the final finding of ZBA should be included, copy sent to the commission. And breakaway walls and elevated structures to be designed in accordance with the FEMA regulations. That is all, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? No, Chris? No. Len, you're all set? All right. Questions from the table?
So I move to approve the plan consistent with Chris's recommendations.
I second it.
All right, second from Bert. All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous, Al. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Andy, take care now, Len, thank you.
All right.
I'll be right back.
Oh,
Andy, Andy,
I tried to get him Velcro
Andy.
shoes, but,
no.
Didn't know how to do it.
yeah. All right, Robert Bronca, notice of intent, 2015 Main Road, construct natural stone patio on the riverfront in the flood zone.
Yeah, yeah,
That's your second point.
that's it, thanks, Cap. I don't see anybody here from Mr. Brown.
Who's supposed to be here?
Somebody from CEC, it's Sean, Steve is,
Just put that in the.
Steve is continuing the hearing scheduled for Jonathan Costa, so maybe that's why there's nobody here.
Okay, so let's continue.
11:08.
Continuance for Robert Bronca, notice of intent, 2015 Main Road. Construct natural stone patio in the riverfront area. I need a continuance to, November 8th, please.
So moved.
Thank you.
second.
Second from Jason. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Jonathan Costa, Excel Westport Properties, notice of intent, SE 80 2653, 37 Charlotte White Road, create stormwater mitigation controls for existing recycling operation in the buffer zone. This is also gonna be continued to November 8th.
Correct.
Need a motion, please.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Second from Kevin. Jason made the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. All right. Let's see. Get rid of that. Okay. Bills, minutes, and correspondence.
Oh, we got a COC, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, there we go.
And I got some unanticipated
Put my
things.
spectacles back on because I might have missed it.
Yes, you did, that's okay.
Okay, here, let's see, what's this?
Janet Saloon.
This is Bronco, this is not going anywhere tonight. This is recycling. This is notice of intent, 1334 34 Deidre Road?
Janet Samin.
Yes. What about it? Where is this? Okay, city with compliance, okay.
There you go. Thank you,
Where is
Mr.
it?
Chairman.
Oh, there it is. Alan and Janice Samin, SE 802535, 1334 Deidre Road.
Thank you,
My
Mr.
glasses
Chairman.
back on.
Janet Samin, 1334 Deidre Road, certificate of compliance requested through her engineer, Alan Veru Engineering. On report date is October 20th, 2022. I didn't include the file number, it's SE 802535.
2535.
All work has been completed as the engineer letter stated. Photos are available if you need it. And Westport Conservation, in their recommendation, they should consider issuing a full certificate of compliance for file number SE 802535, as all work has been completed according to the plan of record.
All right, any questions? If not, a motion?
So moved.
Okay, motion from Phil,
Second.
second from Jason, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Whose bag is that right there? Is that Andy?
That's,
Lenny, Andy, you want to chase him down?
yeah, it's, Andy was sitting there, right?
Yeah.
Andy.
I have a couple unanticipated things, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
These are also certificate of compliances, they should be included in here. One is Mr. Stephen Shank for 625 Old County Road. This is a reissuance of a previously issued certificate of compliance. So we just need a motion to sign a new one for the purpose of recording.
So this was already approved.
These are already approved, Mr.
All right.
Chairman, at a prior meeting of
So
another
I
commission.
need a motion to approve the reissue of certificate of compliance for SE 801990.
Stephen Shank.
Stephen Shank, 217 IR Tickle Road.
No, 625 Old County.
Oh, okay, mail to, okay. 625 Old County Road. Do we have a motion to continue? Motion to issue the replacement certificate of compliance.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
All right. We have,
The same thing, suites of Mr. Chairman Arthur, suites are 34 Whistle Point Road. This is also a reissuance of a previously issued certificate of compliance. Again, this is for reporting purposes, they lost the original application, so I asked that the commission reissue that certificate of compliance. All work has been done again in compliance with those orders and conditions.
a motion to reissue certificate of compliance for SE 802277.
I
So moved. Go ahead.
Okay, so we have Bert, you have a second?
Bill.
Phil, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, this is an oldie, we had Grace and we had Richard Lambert, God rest his soul, and they're, you know.
Yeah,
That's an
again,
oldie.
people lose things and then they realize there's a blemish on their title. All hell breaks loose.
All right,
So that is all I have for you at this time, Mr.
okay,
Chairman.
now we'll go back to bills and minutes.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just wondered if we wanted to talk about it a little.
I was
Yeah.
gonna wait till you
Okay, good,
finalize the
great.
minutes on,
Great.
bills.
Yeah.
Trying to jump the gun. All right, we have this, conservation restriction, this is one we already signed, you want a second copy? This is
You
for
can
the-
sign another one, Mr. Chairman.
This is for the, property that Ross.
Berry,
owns.
Berry Hill
Okay.
Farm, yes, the, Pierce.
All right.
You do have to
It does.
notarize it in the morning, we discussed this.
Notary public.
Yes, you
Yeah.
do.
You
We'll
know
notary it and then I'll pick it up
You
tomorrow.
know anybody who can do that? Oh, okay. All right, we have, what the heck is this? Oh, local IQ advertising, $283.50, looking for a motion to pay.
Motion to pay.
You have a second?
Second.
Second from Jason, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's unanimous. WB Mason, $16.25 for office supplies, motion to pay.
Motion to pay.
All right, you have a second?
Second.
Second from Phil, all in favor? Opposed? All right, that's unanimous, on. 10-11 minutes. Let's see, present, Jason. Phil, myself, and so that's
No,
not
can't do
happening.
that, no.
9:27, let's see who was present. Kevin, Bert, Phil, no, that's not happening either.
Nope.
All right, back to August 2nd. Let's see who's present. Jake, Phil, myself, Bert. Oh, jeez, none of these minutes are getting done tonight. We'll get it one of these days. So that's it for the folder. You guys, there's 3 things to sign there.
I wanted to brief you on the calendar, that's for 2023.
Is my birthday on here?
I don't know what date your birthday is, Mr. Chairman, you're most likely willing to miss that meeting, it's fine. This is coordinating with the planning board, we come to have clashes with, this use of this room. This recreation tonight was the first time, so
Can't sign this.
we will try to make sure people are on time, but if you see anything wrong with this, let us know. We might have some meetings we may have to postpone, like the January 3rd. But that just fit in with everyone's schedule, so if we have to, we can always.
I'm typically gone Thanksgiving week.
I don't think so.
But I mean, Jason can hold the fort down, which
No,
is more than
well, that's still this year, but this following year, I see, yeah, that's understandable, so, all right, if anyone else has any questions. The second thing I got is we had a site visit today, member Bert and Phil were present on the DEP site walk for Brian Corey's property across the street here on Main Road. This was for the public water supply, attaching and the pump house facility with a replication, area that's been long overdue. We had some discussion on the flag line, there was agreement to connect flag lines together, that Brian was trying to utilize an old flag line with a new flag line, so we came to conclusions, and I think all parties agreed to those flag line changes. It pretty much stays the same in the area of the replication, and we felt that with that, it didn't really affect the plans itself. So there was gonna be some changes made to those plans for the state level. Phil also was present, as I mentioned. We discussed the overview of our well consultant that gave us the comments and our concerns for the use of those wells. Phil may want to express more, but the state said that they would look at the Wetlands Protection Act in respect to their side of things, and they would consult with the Water Supply Division for some of the concerns we raised. So with that, I don't know if Phil had.
Well, so they gave us a timeline, Gary did, of, sometime in either November or at the outside, like before Christmas, because he wants to wrap this up before he retires, at least on a temporary basis. And what I think would be appropriate for us to do would be to prepare a response to the Buzzards Bay Notice of Appeal, because they challenged our approval of the replication area, challenged our approval of the pump house, which, just leave that there, and also raised questions about stormwater. So and this all kind of turned around about how they're interpreting the regulations and the fact that we really had to figure out what the impact of the pumps would be in the operational phase before we could do any of these other things. And I think that we took the path of saying we're retaining our jurisdiction, so to speak, over the operation, and we're going to address that separately, but and at one point they expressed the same thing of like moving ahead of this much delayed restoration. So I just think we should put our arguments in writing to DEP and kind of lay out why I think we took the right path. The point that Chris was making, which we made in the previous letter, was that the logic, I think, of what we approved as far as the pump house and the connections was they had this valid approval from water supply and an authorization to construct. And then, what the George Campbell's report showed was, at least, was that the facts underlying the water supply approval were just erroneous, right? Like that he didn't, it was based on this pump test that never really occurred. And so our previous letter kind of proposed to DEP that essentially they need to relook at that whole approval, and that based on that, we wanted to withdraw our approval of the infrastructure part of it, because if they don't have a valid approval, then why are we approving this infrastructure? So, I don't think that necessarily gained a lot of traction, but, it's also an opportunity to reiterate that, just to, I think, just say, why do you wanna, it's like all this information is in DEP, it's not really an opinion, they can look at this and make their own decision, and if, in fact, they issued the water supply permit based on a false representation of the testing protocol, then they should correct it. And until they correct that, they should not be allowed to move ahead with the other infrastructure part of it. But in some way, he's doing that at his own risk, so I don't think he's got his construction crew lined up to do any of this in the real world. But, so, I don't know if if you wanna take a vote on filing a response to the Buzzards Bay notice of appeal, but I think it would be a good thing for us to do, to set out what our position is, because I think it'll help DEP kind of come to the position that supports us, I guess.
I know one of the issues in the Campbell report was, I think it was the drawdown was larger on one of the wells that was farther away than the other well.
Right.
Did they bring out their original raw data, and maybe they transposed the locations, or did they address that, I guess, at the?
Well, I just thought it was interesting that, Mr. Corey, who was there, did not say anything about that argument. Did not come forward and said, oh, that was just a typographical error, a clerical mistake, we actually did all this. He did not defend in any way or challenge in any way what the Campbell report said. And so, I don't know how much you can make of that, but there was an opportunity for him to indicate,
So I think it's more so that we should contribute a letter because of that.
yeah,
If
I
it
mean,
clarifies that
yeah.
it is a grammatical error, then
Right,
that should
right.
be stated and corrected for all
Right.
parties.
Right. I mean, I agree with Chris that I think that Gary is kind of saying that we're talking to water supply, but that we're really gonna look at
Focus,
the decision in the context of the wetlands regulations, which, I think is right. I think, at least the way I saw the purpose of the letter, which also went to the section chief of water supply, was to say, you ought to take a look at, relook at what you did, and if it's wrong, you should correct it. And I don't know, so I don't expect the SOC would require that, but there are other issues beyond that, related to this whole idea that we really didn't have the authority, or we erred in allowing the replication to go forward, and, because we were not making a decision about what the impact of the operation was. And I just think that is wrong, because, because it's 5 or 6 years, and we want the replication to go forward, and we have no idea when this operation, if ever, is gonna happen. And
Right.
even then, there's be like 3 years before it's, to restore the wetland. And anyway, there's some complicated issues in there, but about the fisheries, I don't know how that really works. But anyway, it was just,
So you're gonna work on that with
so I'm
Chris?
gonna work on that.
Okay.
If we approve it, I'll develop a draft. We have some time to do it,
Okay.
and then circulate it, and, so,
I think that's great.
Make motion.
yeah.
Make a motion to, I'll make the motion, 'cause Jason wanted to do it, but I'm gonna steal his thunder. To, have Phil and Chris work together and put together a response to Buzzards Bay appeal. That's when you say second.
I was giving someone else a chance to contribute.
Oh, I don't wanna second my own.
I'll second it.
All right, good man. All those in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
All right.
There you go.
Tough crowd.
No, that's, I think, the way we should do things on record, and that, you said,
Was there, I know that, Brian Corey sent an email about doing pump well test or whatever.
Brian is.
Is that not needed anymore or not?
You know, George did sign back in or comment back in that it wouldn't hurt, but he wasn't prepared to come here at the last, you know, we didn't give any. So, long story short, I think the information would have been better at the time he was commencing
Yeah.
the finalization of his report, but I think we still can request this information. As you understand, Brian was told that to turn those wells on, he needs to come back before us. So there is that, where he would need now, I think, have to provide some documentation if we felt it wasn't correct in water supplies, that we should have a clear.
Well, it's part of the appeal to have that all wrapped into the appeal.
I think he's anticipating a further appeal in this, but I hope not, because as Phil mentioned, the replication and this road are in place, and if anything, the roadway's starting to become replicated because it's not being maintained or used, you know, there's wetland vegetation growing right up through this hard gravel surface, so, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, anybody else have anything? Not, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
I second it.
Thanks, Bert. All in favor? Opposed?
Aye.
It's unanimous now.